Happening now. We'd like to welcome our viewers from across North America and around the world. This is the EdTech Situation Room, episode 252 for March the 16th, 2022. My name is Wes Fryer, coming to you from Oklahoma City, where I am the Technology Integration and Innovation Specialist, aka Media Literacy teacher for middle school and sixth grade advisor at the Cassidy School just down the street for about 2.5 more months. We're on spring break and apologize for our late start tonight, but we'll, I'm sure, get in a full 60 minutes of action, especially since the EdTech guru of the North, guys, look at that stack of books. He's partially obscuring it. And the photograph that he had on social media of him in the halls of power this last week sort of was a little deceiving, thinking maybe he'd cut his hair, but he assures me he's not. Jason Neiffer, welcome to the EdTech Situation Room.
Good evening, Dr. Fryer. So good to see you. And indeed, it's true. I'm joining you from Missoula, Montana tonight, which is the home of the University of Montana, which is the home of the Montana Digital Academy, where I am the executive director of that wonderful organization. It's true. I had an opportunity to speak with an interim legislative committee this week, which was a real delight. My first opportunity to speak to that group as the executive director. So it was a pretty exciting week over here in Missoula. And spring is kind of here, which, in Montana, we have several springs. I think we're in second false spring now. So I'd assume that we are going to have at least one more significant bout, maybe multiple bouts with snow before this week is said, this season is said and done. But the highs have been in the 40s and early 50s this week, which is super delightful. But I don't think we're here to talk about the weather. Wes, what is the EdTech Situation Room all about?
Well, for 251 episodes, we have been talking about technology news, as you say, shooting it through the prism of the educational lens. So we are trying to talk about tech news, but also think about how that would impact schools, teachers, students, parents, the classroom community, or all of the folks around education. And so we have compiled a list of links that we curate every week. You can always find those on our website at edtechsr.com/links. And we are in the habit now of categorizing them. Last week, I've started now to bold the ones that we talk about. Ooh, I just remembered I didn't send out the Substack. So anyway, we got our post-production crew was just slacking off the last couple weeks, but they're getting back on the job. And so anyway, if you're always, if you're curious, you can look for the semicolons between the source and the date for Jason's links and the commas for mine. And then I'm trying to, as we kind of go through, bold them, because we almost always have more articles than we have time to talk about. But tonight's topics are Google, Apple, Microsoft, Ukraine war news, which I'll admit I kind of put a lot of links in for that, smart whatever IoT, the tech correction, creating, media literacy, and we'll wrap up with the Geek of the Week. So I'll just mention before we jump in, Dr. Neiffer, to your topic of choice. I did watch the March 8th Apple event in full. It was just a 60-minute program. Nothing. What excites me is in a couple years, that incredible Mac Studio is going to be a lot less expensive, and the power and horses that it has are just incredible. But I think my main thought was sort of on the digital storytelling side. Apple, just masterful communicators, and the way they use, I don't know if infographic is the exact right word, but they use a summary slide sort of after each module in each piece, really trying to drive home the key elements of new features and things like that. It's really quite masterful. And I could see myself as I'm talking to students and teaching about presentation skills and just good presentation kind of best practices. I try to throw that across the room to use that as an example, just to watch, a clip of it to see, how they communicate. So did you take a look at the video afterwards, or
I watched probably the first half of it, and it was kind of a half watch, half listening while I was in a walk the other day. Yeah, and they do a really good job of doing that. Now, that said, one of the things that happened the day or two after is that Apple gets accused pretty frequently of cherry picking statistics and comparisons it wants to make, and sometimes those can be rather dubious. I still think that these are all extremely compelling hardware products. Like, even if they're not 2.5 times, and rather they're 1.7 times faster than similarly priced or similarly configured hardware, I think that the M1 Ultra in the Mac Studio is extremely compelling hardware choice. I'm perfectly happy with my M1 Mac Mini, which I purchased earlier in 2021. And in fact, since I'm not working at home much anymore, it really doesn't matter. Like, I do spend, in fact, the most productive thing I do every week probably on this machine is this podcast. So it's not something that I would be interested in upgrading, but I would say the $2,000 price for the lower spec Mac Studio, I think, is a wonderfully compelling piece, especially if you're someone that understands that that's probably going to be 6, 7, 8 years worth of hardware, even for a power user, over the coming years.
All right. Well, we did half the show last week on Apple, so we don't need to definitely do quite as much this time. Where would you like to start with tonight's links?
Well, let me pick up on a couple of quick Microsoft stories that we didn't get to previously because they're interesting. One of them is we've talked a couple of times before about the challenge of Windows 11 and the fact that it only supports relatively recent hardware, which is actually kind of a shift for Microsoft, because one of the compelling things about Windows 10 when it was released in 2015 was that it was a better experience on older hardware than Windows 7, which a lot of people were both surprised by and delighted by, and I would imagine was a huge advantage to schools. But Windows 11 has a pretty stringent hardware requirements. However, you can install Windows 11 even on an unsupported machine. It just doesn't get the promise of updates, and my understanding is that sometimes it can be a little wonky if you're trying to manage them in the enterprise. But I'm just noting from The Verge on February 22nd that Microsoft is actually now wanting to put a desktop watermark or a note on your desktop when it's on unsupported hardware. And I guess it feels to me like Microsoft made a decision to build Windows 11 off of needing a certain minimum hardware, but also some security hardware in the that's attached to the BIOS. If you're going to talk about that decision being a wonderful decision, then I think you just need to go for it and stop allowing people to install it on or install it on unsupported hardware, and not go through the rigmarole of not doing updates or letting it's on unsupported hardware. If that's the right decision, then I think you got to stick by it. But that does kind of feel like a classic Microsoft versus like a classic Apple. Apple just doesn't apologize for things. It tends to it has a general history of supporting hardware a little longer than other manufacturers do, but at the same time, they unapologetically do things like, get rid of all the ports on a laptop, or decide that the floppy drive is not worth your time, or decide that the optical drive is not worth your time, and the many decisions they've made along the way to kind of evolve computing as part of their process. And I think that it's probably not the best decision to allow people to play with Windows 11, even though the hardware is unsupported. So that's a really quick one. And then this one, I'm more curious to hear from you, Dr. Fryer, on this. But there appears to be a new video editing app on Windows 11 called Clipchamp, and The Verge talked about this on March 9th, and there is it's kind of being heralded as an alternative to Windows Movie Maker, which was it's been not available for some time, but it's a timeline based app, not unlike if you use Camtasia Studio, or the old Windows Movie Maker was like this, or Adobe Premiere is like this as well. It allows for multi-track audio support and generally user friendly editing tricks. And I think this is a really good call on Microsoft's part. That I think that it may not be for the super advanced creators, but especially in a school environment, having an integrated video editor into Windows, I think would encourage a lot of flexibility, whether you're in a one-to-one environment or utilize classroom sets or labs. So your thoughts, sir?
Oh, absolutely. Hey, video is the pencil of the 21st century, baby. So we all need to be much more practiced and literate in the creation of video and different kinds of media. And I think that is a really good move. I think that Google, with the Google Suite, the Google Workspace apps, it's a glaring omission. We use the Adobe, what was Adobe Spark is now called the Adobe CC Express, Creative Cloud Express set of tools, which allow for some video creation. But I totally agree. It's been a glaring omission for them not to have Movie Maker. Back in the day, this would have put us back to like 2006-ish. When we came to Oklahoma, that was the heyday of Photo Story 3, which I think I probably learned about from David Jakes. That was a Windows XP application, but it was a great little program for creating narrated slideshows. And I worked with teachers and students and helped hundreds of videos be made with that platform. And then it just went away. There wasn't something else to take its place. So I think it's great, and I hope that media creation tools like that will, continue to be normalized and become more powerful. And I'd love to see something like that. I know WeVideo is something our sixth grade team has licensed for all of our kids with Chromebooks. We don't do that for everybody, but I think everybody needs to have a video tool. Again, Adobe CC Express is free, but it's not quite that same level of power like an iMovie or what it looks like Clipchamp can do. I tend to make most of my videos now on my phone, and that is something that a lot of students might have access to. But yay, Microsoft. And I hope that we'll see if anybody's used that or is using that with students, giving that a try. If you're in a one-to-one environment with, any kind of Microsoft laptop, Surface, and, laptops, that would be a great thing to be testing and using if you're not already, doing something with WeVideo or have another platform out there.
Yep. Awesome. Okay, where would you like to go to next, sir?
All right. Well, I'm going to do the breaking news, although I don't think I did quite as good as you. So let's go to Ukraine war news. And this is coming to us hot off the press. Shout out to Lisa Durf on Twitter. And this is a Verge article from today, March the 16th. Facebook removes deep fake of Ukrainian President Zelensky. In the fake video, Zelensky surrenders to the Russian invasion. And in her tweet, Lisa noted that we were warning and talking about deep fakes in 2019, a couple years ago. And so this is exactly the kind of scenario that deep fakes are dangerous for. That if someone has enough video that you have access to via any source, then the AI can be trained to basically make that person not only look like they're saying it, but sound like they're saying whatever you want them to say. And so in this case, the creators of this, which are undoubtedly Russian sympathizers, were having Zelensky ask Ukrainians to lay down their arms. Now, it does note that in the video, his head is comically larger than in real life, and it's more pixelated. So it doesn't, and then the fake voice is deeper. So we've seen some others, like there's a pretty famous one that was recent with Tom Cruise. Anyway, they probably didn't have as much time or maybe as many resources to be able to put it together. But still, ladies and gentlemen, we used to talk about, Photoshop in the, checkout aisle of the grocery store. All of those people are airbrushed. I mean, that's still true. But this kind of thing where a political figure, especially in an international war, is being portrayed as saying something extremely disruptive, it points to the idea that we're in a huge information war. And some people will say there's been information wars before. All kinds of propaganda have, surrounded wars forever. But the degree to which we're in an information war today, it's more of an information war than ever before, as well as a kinetic shooting war. Any thoughts on that, Dr. Neiffer?
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking at the video, and it's pretty obviously a fake. But part of the problem, though, is that on a slow connection, on a smaller screen, maybe a duplication even passed around. That's the problem, that these technologies keep getting better. You mentioned that his head is comically large, which I would also concur looking at the video in the background here. But I mean, we don't need any more complications to our rich media landscape here in 2022, because there's already, an unbelievably unhindered ability to publish to a worldwide audience in just seconds from nearly anywhere via the internet. But it just goes to show you that, especially something, there should be lots of reasons why this video should give you pause, in light of what we know now about the availability of fake news and other kind of constructed information. But the fact that this piece of information goes against every other piece of at least the Western media's perception of the situation should give you pause. And to be honest, if you're looking at this video and saying, "Oh, I know the other thing was a hoax the whole time," maybe you should be questioning your sources too. And it just goes back to that, the internet search engines are not search exercises. They are critical thinking exercises. And if we're not forcing our students to think about even mainstream legitimate sources, right? If it's something that doesn't feel right or feels contrarian, then go find other mainstream sources to either confirm or deny the information that you're receiving.
Amen. Yeah. The S of SIFT is to stop, investigate the source, find trusted coverage, and trace claims to their original. I think there's a good link here to the tech correction as well, which I know you've got some articles tonight for tech correction, because Meta, which used to be called Facebook, made this decision to take this content down, pointing to the fact that these platforms, even though we have section, gosh, I haven't said it in a while. What's the section that something 90, my brain,
230.
Section 230. Thank you so much. I was going to try to Google it. Section 230 allows for, platforms in the United States to not have to have all objectionable, offensive content off. They just have to be trying to kind of keep it clean. But, in the past, they've said, well, we're not publishers, we're just platforms. But, this kind of content moderation, this kind of censorship is essential. But the question is, where is that line drawn?
Yeah.
And I think this is an excellent article to share with students, to share with colleagues, to talk about media literacy and to talk about why we need to be savvy to this kind of thing. And what we don't want is, and this is just my opinion, to be launched into nihilism and a complete abandonment of all trust for journalism and media sources. Instead, we need to say, look, we've got to be savvy. We have to be critical thinkers. We need to be checking things out, especially before we reshare them. And we've all got responsibilities here. And we also have to think about regulation and think about, the degree to which companies should and can self-regulate, and then the degree to which we need government to have some rules to, tell platforms that what they can and can't do. So I'm glad that Facebook has taken this step. Undoubtedly, we're going to see more of this in the future.
Yep, absolutely so.
All right. Let me pick up on, we've got a whole bunch of Ukraine war.
Yeah.
We're not going to get to all of them. But let me do the next one on TikTok. I saw you got a TikTok article also under tech correction. This one's a couple weeks old. This was also from The Verge, March 6th. TikTok temporarily bans new video creation in Russia. So we've seen, and I think we talked about on the show last week, how a number of journalism organizations have left Russia because it's become a crime, basically, to be an independent, news voice in Russia, saying things like it's a war, it's an invasion. And so some really established news agencies have taken their folks out. There's still people who are there. I think I saw today a headline about a Fox News journalist who had disappeared and was feared dead. But anyway, this was an article talking about how TikTok, which again is Chinese owned, so that it's a very complicated, fractured media landscape with a lot of pollution and a lot of different voices. And it's more difficult, I think, Dr. Neiffer, than it was when you and I were, in school or even in college. And the landscape is challenging more so than ever. But in part, perhaps, to respond to some of those kinds of issues, or just the fact that it's going to be problematic with content. Anyway, TikTok decided in response to this quote unquote fake news law to suspend new video uploads and live streams on its app in Russia. Now, what's interesting is, I don't know. I mean, there's other places where these things can be created in terms of sourcing, disinformation, misinformation, malinformation, as some people will call it. I read another article or heard somebody talking about how, the ruble, the Russian currency crashing has really hurt their ability to pay for disinformation and trolls. And there's been a bit of mystique around, 2016 election. Ooh, Russia, they've got this vast capability. Well, it hasn't all been just homegrown local. I mean, they're paying for it too. So anyway, I thought this was probably a very predictable reaction. But in terms of TikTok deciding not to allow those kinds of uploads, but it certainly begs a lot of questions about how different, companies are going to have to be with their rules and their guidelines for what you can do here in this country or what you can't do. The days of, hey, anywhere you want on the planet, you can, upload. I guess unless you have an Elon Musk Starlink connection, right? Because maybe you're going to be able to do whatever you want on Starlink. We mentioned that last week, that they've gotten some Starlink, connections down into Ukraine. But as far as Russia, it really is a big impact. Probably more people using VPNs, and there's some articles about ways that different people are trying to get more information to Russia. But any thoughts there?
Yeah. Well, I guess I'd start with the thing I find most interesting about this is that I do see some stuff kind of trickling into my TikTok, with both my For You page and the followers page, that is related to. Sorry about that. Related to the Ukrainian war, but I'm sure it has to happen. But the thing about the TikTok algorithm that, and there are some people that have concerns in the other direction about this, is that it's just not something that's making it into my feed. And I spend a fair amount of time on TikTok now. I enjoy it as a platform, and and it's barbecue TikTok, and it's nerd TikTok, and it's teacher TikTok, which I also find to be kind of amusing too. But the thing that was interesting about this is that just tells you that there is a shocking amount of content on TikTok. And, it sounds like that one of the things they were doing was attempting to be proactive before they ran afoul of the new law. But because it seems like the Putin regime is being pretty hardball, or is playing hardball with this, with even tech companies in Russia. But the thing that just strikes me is that that means that there's a lot of content likely that is happening there. I do follow a couple of Ukrainian-based creators. That's been very informative, but at the same time, it is interesting that it's of concern enough to change the or to ban Russians from jumping in on it.
Yep. We could go a little more with some of those articles, or we can certainly jump to something else, because this is the kind of thing that has a couple more. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Anyone you want to pick up or have me talk about next?
Oh, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, so we got okay, well, let's do a positive one. All right, so this is from the Times of Israel on March 4th. Harvard Internet Whiz 19 creates website, or actually there are a couple of them, I think, connecting Ukrainian refugees with hosts. So this is, a student, Avi Schiffman, who had also created a heavily used COVID tracking site. And so he used his coding skills basically to enable refugees fleeing the war in the Ukraine to locate places that they can stay. And so that could be resort hotels that have space, or other places where people have volunteered to be able to let people stay for a period of time. hosts that will take them in. And the website is called UkraineTakeShelter.com. Launched on March the 3rd. He says in the article there had to be something very streamlined and intuitive to use. Refugees are very stressed, confused, and lost. I think I read on here it was in like 18 languages or something like that. And so anyway, that's an awesome example of, technology being utilized to try and meet a need. A student, in this case, a college student, who has already developed, other websites and things that were taking data and, being able to present things, but then, applying those skills in a new area. So I thought that was pretty awesome and a good example of something to probably share as an inspiring bit of news in the midst of a lot of very negative news with the Ukraine war.
I do want to pick up on one other Ukraine article because I know the background on this. The one you posted was from the Washington Post on March 11th, but the White House last week briefed TikTokers on the war in Ukraine. And what's interesting about that is that it's certainly not my primary news source. I am still very much an NPR, New York Times person is where I get the vast majority of my national, international news. But I do listen to a fair bit of news on TikTok. News TikTok is something that I think I kind of naturally stumbled into, and I kind of like some of the creators. I would suggest, for example, Under Desk News is a creator that I follow on TikTok, and really enjoy that particular channel, and is a pretty good take on things. And that particular journalist is now working for the LA Times as well. But the what I think is interesting about this is I think it's very savvy on the Biden administration part. I thought it was very savvy on the Trump administration's part when they were engaging more influencer style public relations firms in the past several in the last months of the Trump administration. But I think it's a very smart move on the Biden administration's part. And I do think that a lot of people are probably getting their news, maybe not probably primarily from platforms like TikTok. So I thought it was a clever move on the part of Biden's media team.
And to bring that back to the classroom, we need to be not only utilizing video as teachers to help present information and help students learn, but we need to be helping students learn how to utilize video, how to analyze it, how to vet it, and also how to create it. Video has to be a good thing to try to find a study on, but in terms of the way that the majority of people are getting the information in a specific case, like about Ukraine, I'm sure there's large numbers of folks that are primarily getting their information from TikTok and YouTube. And so it's one of those things that I really don't think our educational system writ large has adjusted to. And whether you're teaching a computer or technology course or not, this is just part of literacy today. There's different sides to it. The deepfake stuff we were talking about, earlier is one side of it. But yeah, I thought this was fascinating, and I think our administration is being savvy here. They're being tech savvy because they're recognizing that it's not enough to just put out a press release and try to be traditional. Traditional means of getting the word out are still important, but these influencers and the ways in which platforms like TikTok are being utilized is huge. I want to go ahead and do a shout out. We're not going to get to all these. There's 10 more articles, but there is an awesome article. This is where Jason and I are trying to be the filter for each other and for you. Wired published in Ars Technica on March 12th. Russia's disinformation machinery breaks down in the wake of the Ukraine invasion. And this is actually where I found my Geek of the Week that I'll share a little bit later. The author of this is Tom Southern. And this is one of the articles I read where he talks about the Russian influence on not only the 2016 US election, but on the Brexit vote in the UK, the ways in which Russia has really, invested in the digital realm in its disinformation war. But they've had some big missteps. And so I'll read the part of this paragraph. Critically, the Kremlin seemed to understand that while our online worlds are key parts of us, we behave differently there because it taps into our magical thinking. It is real and unreal at the same time. We troll each other, scream at each other, produce millions of hours of ever weirder content, all because of the world is slightly unreal. And it basically talks about how the screens are almost become like spirituality. There's wild leaps of faith. And of course, this is where conspiracy theory comes in. And so anyway, there's a whole kind of side of the human psyche that is tapped into with some of this content, which some people are, going to for entertainment, for all kinds of different reasons. And so anyway, I thought this was a fascinating article talking about the disinformation rules that have really been violated. And so Putin, he's arguing that Putin has very severely underestimated the extent to which we in the West have become wiser to media manipulation. We've developed new capabilities. Zelensky has a lot of social media savvy. It's a little bit like, Ronald Reagan. What was his background before he's president? Oh, he was a Hollywood actor. He was ideally situated skill-wise to present very compelling, presentations from the White House to the American people. He was just a great, great communicator. And in the same way, Zelensky, trained as an actor, he's been brilliant in many of the ways that he has been communicating and utilizing video and social media. And so anyway, basically the article is saying that Russia has not recognized the way that the world has moved. And I think this is a positive from the standpoint of, media literacy education writ large, not just in classrooms, but, via journalism, via the internet. It has an impact on people's critical thinking and on the potential susceptibility that we have to some of this. But there's a lot of other layers here, and mainstream media still makes a big difference. And a lot of the news that many Russians are getting through their mainstream media channels, certainly does not provide any kind of balanced perspective on what is happening. And there's some more articles that we won't have time to get to. But if you want to subscribe to our Substack at edtechsr.substack.com, we'll email those out to you, or you can always check them out in the Google Doc too. But any thoughts there?
No, other than to say that we just can't treat 2022 like the media landscape is the same, right? And I feel like over and over again, we keep kind of hoping that we're going to go back to normal at some point, but the cat's out of the bag on these technologies, right? And even though I feel somewhat encouraged by the fact that people are starting to question social media. People are starting to deplatform themselves in some cases if social media isn't good for their mental health. But the bottom line is that it's encouraging to hear that that some of the tricksterness of the last 4 or 5 years in international media trickery is kind of scaling itself back. The bottom line is that we just still need to be extremely careful and don't believe everything you read on the internet.
I'm gonna do one more fast one, and this is from BBC, and this was on, I think, the 12th. This is a positive spam article, right? Okay. Have we ever talked positively about spam on the EdTech Situation Room? I'm not sure we have. So there is a website that's been set up to reach millions of Russians by a Norwegian computer expert who wanted to do something. And so he has set this up that you can send email to up to 150 Russian email addresses at a time, in the hope that Russian folks can hear, quote unquote, the truth their government is hiding. And so one of the things that we probably all know about spam and its proliferation online is that there are these blacklists that exist, and certain email addresses and even domains and things like that get blacklisted. And so you get marked as spam. What this is doing is letting individual people anywhere on the planet who have an email account, a real one, right, that's not created for spam, to be able to use this and then be the sending source for these kinds of messages. And so there's some other things that are going on TikTok and on other kinds of social, actually on dating sites. There's another article about this too, where people are just, interacting. There was somebody who changed his location to Russia to say, hey, I'm here in Russia, and he's been getting into conversations about the Ukraine. But I thought that was pretty interesting. And usually, again, when we hear about spam, we just think, oh, it's terrible. And so there is this question of, is this an illegitimate use of technology because this is spam? But, the Norwegian developer who created this is saying, my goal is to try and help educate Russians who can't hear the truth in their mainstream media. And I thought that was pretty fascinating. So would you like to save us from Ukraine news, Dr. Neiffer, with some other technology topics?
I'm going to do so. Let's cover actually a wide variety of interesting pieces of Google news. The first one is that there is some new Google Classroom features. Chrome Unbox featured today that and I see that John Sowash is now writing for Chrome Unbox, which is great news. There are new Google Classroom features available, and one of the most interesting ones is that there is now a notion of something that's called practice sets. And I'm not entirely sure. I read both the blog post and the article, and I'm not entirely sure if I 100% understand how this works, but it's mostly aimed at mathematics practice sets, which is whenever you have a problem that you're inking out the answer to. My understanding is that not only does Google using AI let you know if you're on the right track or not to answer the question correctly, it can actually provide additional guidance and resources to you if you're in the middle of the problem and you're not doing it correctly, which I think is a extraordinary thing. And I'm not sure why I'm so popular tonight, but it's something that's really, I think, interesting in the direction they're going into. It's nice to see Google Classroom continue to try to figure out more ways to enhance their LMS.
And that article points out there's some really powerful Google magic, that's what they say in the article, similar to what we've seen with Google Lens, pulling questions and problems from images and PDF files, and basically taking static content that would be usually just like sent to students and used as is, but making that more interactive. I think that is fascinating. And I think that, what this reminded me of was a little bit of just the different, like when I was teaching Spanish last year for the pandemic, we used a variety, Quizlet. There were some other tools that we were using, as far as vocabulary and things like that. But being able to, as he says in the article, help solve some homework frustration, or contribute to positive experiences for students, being able to leverage some tools that are going to help them better review and have better feedback. I think that is fantastic. So good find there on that article.
Another interesting article. This one I'm unusually excited about, but this one is from today's Verge, and there's a new Google Docs update available called what's just one of the features under their Smart Canvas initiative. And we've talked a little bit about how Google's been evolving or Google Docs has been evolving quite a bit over the last year. And they did change the technology that was showing a Google Doc on a screen. And they've also started adding the so-called chips into other locations, so it's easy to pull other people in for collaboration. But this one's super interesting. Basically, all you need to do to start this feature is to use an @ symbol and type a name in there, and then it will bring up a form to where you can start composing an email in Docs as opposed to elsewhere. And that's super cool because I actually do a lot of work in emails from Docs and have to copy and paste them back in. And my understanding is that you can then send the email by clicking on the Google the Gmail icon. It then pops up that email composed in a Gmail window and allows you to send it. And I just think that's super cool for productivity purposes.
Man, that is something I've never even thought of before. So bringing together a couple different products and possibly changing workflows, and that looks cool.
Let's see, a couple other Google-based article, and I think you posted this one. I kind of want to hear more about it. Google has shut down YouTube Vanced, a popular ad-blocking Android app. What details do you have for us there?
So, are you still a YouTube Red subscriber?
Yes, I am.
I'm tempted to do that. One of the things I dislike the most on my Apple TV is the fact that I can't block ads on YouTube. So some developers basically stole the source code for the YouTube Android app and they remixed it illegally. So they decompiled it. This was, I think, put out in 2017, and they stripped out the ads. And so this is obviously not something that Google and YouTube want. They want you to be able to see the ads unless you're going to pay for, YouTube Red and be able to monetize in that way. And so this is an example of copyright and what you can legitimately do with other code. But I thought that was interesting. And so that app has actually been pulled from the store and it's now dead. So,
well, and I'd also say, just for the record too, that YouTube's a different experience with ads turned off, right? I understand why people were trying to work around that. I pay $9.99 for YouTube, whatever, and it keeps changing because they keep adding more services. It's probably getting me way more money. Or I'm sorry, it's costing me way less money than if I had bought some of these services individually. But I have the advanced new YouTube music piece. And it's worth it to me because across all my platforms, I see zero ads, at least pop-up ads, right? There's still ads sometimes in the context of the videos, but I just cannot believe how different the environment is. And I'm not entirely sure I totally agree with YouTube's notion to push ads more aggressively onto the platform. But at the same time, the web is not free, right? We should stop pretending it's free, and targeted advertising is what makes a lot of the web go round. But if you're a big YouTube user, and I love YouTube, but YouTube is a big part of my media consumption diet. I get a lot of wonderful news and information resources from YouTube. But if that's you, I think it's worth the $10 a month to pay to get rid of the ads.
That is a good endorsement, and it's one of those things that I'm definitely going to be thinking about and considering. I'm going to drop the link into the chat for the uBlock Origin Chrome extension, which is one of the ones that I always recommend to students and teachers. It will basically on your laptop, whether you're running a Chromebook or any other platform, and you're running Chrome, it'll block basically all the ads, and in YouTube it does as well. So yes, I do agree. We do need to be sensitive to the fact that the web is largely funded today, these free products, to a big degree by advertising. And we've talked before on the show, and just a few episodes ago, I'm trying to remember the name of the initiative, but Google was trying to basically have a new standard for doing third-party cookie tracking. And anyway, it ended up getting killed because I think it was going to give Google too much power. But part of what some people had warned is, oh my gosh, that might, kill ad blockers. So there is a bit of cat and mouse going on here, and probably will continue to be with regard to ads. But it's not illegal to run an ad blocker. All right. So we're not doing anything illegal. I've never heard that as an allegation. It's not like you're hacking code, as in the case of this YouTube Advanced program was. But it is certainly something that, Google and YouTube have some interest in at some point, probably trying to defeat. But in the educational context, where there's not targeted advertising and tracking of students, under the age of 13, especially, but I think it's all users of what used to be called Google Apps for Education, now Google Workspace for Education, whatever. It is a little bit different. So anyway, I do appreciate that endorsement of YouTube Red, though, and I will, in addition to continuing to think, do I want to buy some AirTags? Jason Neiffer uses them and loves them.
Yeah,
thinking
absolutely
about
love them.
the YouTube, Premium. It's called a YouTube Premium now instead of YouTube
Probably, yeah. They keep changing the name, but
right.
Hey, I want to hit one more Chrome article. This one is from 9 to 5 Google yesterday, and they're reporting that Chrome for Mac has achieved its highest speedometer score to date, beating Safari. And they have more details there, but Chrome is kind of infamously a dog on Macs, and tends to be both a memory hog and slower than other browser options. And of course, the fastest browser on Mac has always been Safari, because it's made by the people that make the hardware and the operating system, so it's necessarily going to have an advantage. But they've been working a lot lately at Chrome Central, the Chrome development team at Google has been working on trying to make the browser a little more svelte and speedy across all platforms. But they released a new version. It's version 99, which is rolled out across all the different architectures, and it is faster, I believe, across all platforms. But it's now faster by benchmarks than Safari on the Mac, which is pretty impressive. So I just did run a benchmark when I saw this article, and it had I still use the old Octane benchmark from Google, even though it's been depreciated and is no longer considered 100% reliable. But I achieved a ridiculously high score. It's like 80,000 on the benchmark. And speedometer browserbench.org has the speedometer benchmark, and they achieved a very, 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 very high rating. And I want to say it was like 100 and even more ridiculous. It achieved 300 on the speedometer.org test, which is pretty impressive.
We are coming up to the top of the hour. However, we started late, so we do have about 15 minutes left in our 60-minute show. I'll pick up one more Google article that I actually dropped in. I think last week, Jason, you had put in an article about some developers at Google talking about their desire to really become dominant on the tablet side of things. And so this one caught my attention. This was 9 to 5 Google on March 14th. This is Abner Lee's article, who titled this, "I prefer the phone version, the underwhelming state of Google's first-party tablet apps on Android." Now, the Gmail app is an exception to this, but he goes through Google Keep, Voice, Home, and just talking about, I guess, basically an underwhelming experience. But Gmail, Google Maps, Google Photos, YouTube Music, those are all considered to be good. Google Calendar is the only one that fits in his category of great. But hey, I would say this is iteration, right? In terms of numbers of users, I don't know. I'm not sure what the market share looks like for people who are using Android tablets at this point, but it's certainly smaller, I think, than the iPad, market, and then even just like Chromebook and things like that. So I do think it's good to see Google continuing to try and move forward in that space. I still have an old Android tablet that's probably about 7 years old, and I don't know if I should just throw it away now. I probably can't even get any money for it. But there are a lot of apps that had similar functionality at the time that I was using it. But, we've just we certainly, I think, see a lot more creativity and work in the iOS space, the iPad OS space than we do for Google. But that one caught my attention on the Google front. So any more Google articles, or would you like to head to a different topic tonight in our remaining time?
Should we do a couple of, let me do the smart home article, because this has been on our list for a couple of weeks. Great article from TechCrunch on February 18th that talks about what I think is absolutely my experience. We are in an era of smart homes, and I haven't looked lately, but the last time I checked, I had 35, maybe 38 devices on my Wi-Fi network. And to be clear, we don't have any tech-savvy teens in our house. It's just me and my wife. I guess you could count my dog, because I've occasionally put a tracker on him for fun. But we have a lot of smart home devices. We've collapsed down to, we're just using Madam A speakers. The Echo speakers from Amazon is our net-based speakers. And at one point, we had a couple of Google devices, but are no longer using those because we've collapsed down to just Madam A and her tools. And we have several smart plugs and a couple smart lights and a couple other home devices. And we also have one net-based camera, which I use mostly to keep an eye on my cat when we're away for a day or two, to make sure she's still breathing. But the thing that I wanted to note, very old cat, 18 and a half years old, but the thing I want to note is that to make that happen, I have 4 or 5 apps on my phone in 4 or 5 different architectures. We have none of the older school IoT devices, like any of them require Z-Wave or those type of protocols where you have to have a separate thing that then plugs into your network so you can get access to those particular devices. We also don't have any smart locks or anything. We tend to be a little old-fashioned in the lock world. But there is a dizzying array of platforms and devices, and the OSs are getting a little better about allowing you to plug those things into mobile operating systems. The newest version of Android, for example, if you have a compatible device, there's a screen you can bring up that shows all your smart devices and controls for that. I think there's something somewhere, and I think it's via maybe the widgets or the stacks that are available. You can do a similar thing in iOS. But the bottom line is that unless you're a hobbyist that wants to manage a bunch of devices, the simple smart home is elusive. And I mention that because we've talked about smart home a lot. Wes and I both have warned quite a few times that one of the biggest risks to having a smart home is that if you're buying cheap devices that are on platforms that no longer exist or aren't getting updated, those provide pretty I guess meaningful opportunities for hackers to get inside your home network. I have worked to segregate all my IoT devices to its own wireless network because I have Wi-Fi. I have a Wi-Fi router that allows for multiple network names, and so I have a separate network that's segregated out for IoT devices. I just want to note, if you're finding all this overwhelming or not accessible to you as an end user, you are absolutely not alone. And to be honest, because of how fragmented our world is, and we have 2, 3, 4, 5 different major sets of platforms that you can utilize IoT devices on, this may not get resolved.
Yeah. 35 devices on the Fryer network tonight, according to Google Home. I use basically the Google Home app, the Smart Life app, which allows me to connect some of these less costly smart plugs and light switches that I've gotten off Amazon. And then I use If This, Then That to set up recipes. I'm going to actually write a blog post. Maybe spring break. So I've been doing some writing called My Quail Spells, because one of the things that's interesting, like about Spotify, when you want to have a playlist, is if there's another name that someone has for that podcast or whatever, it needs to be unique. And we live in our neighborhood's called Quail Creek. And I just learned that there's not that many things called quail. So anyway, I've named all these playlists Quail, Piano, Quail, whatever, tunes, different things. So my recommendation, all that, because I don't totally agree and echo that it is complicated. Number one, okay, go to your local Best Buy, because, I don't do this that often, but I was just roaming around looking for things. It's kind of dangerous. I did call my wife before I, made a purchase this last time. But there's all sorts of interesting things in there, especially smart home area, smart speakers, just seeing what's available. And they've got a whole segment in at least our local store, and this may not be in everyone, but it is the high end, AV. So, setting up your home theater, setting up, audio and speakers and wireless, but it's to do all of that smart home stuff. So of course that's for a premium price. But my recommendation, if you're not going to go that route, which I haven't gone that route, is to really think about your platform. I love Apple. I love my iPhone and my iPad and my MacBook and all my Apple stuff, but I'm just not going to pay that premium price to have an expensive Apple speaker in so many different rooms. And so we've just gone with Google. I really haven't purchased any of the Amazon devices, and I don't know. I'm sure it is a bit more challenging the more hybrid your network is in terms of standards and things like that. So, if you love Amazon, you want to go with all those Echo devices, and that may be the way to go. I think it's probably more sensible to kind of think about, I'm going to be an Amazon house, or I'm going to be a Google house at this point. Or if you want to go Apple, go for it. I mean, they're definitely making great products and they have privacy in mind, but it is a big problem. However, it's wonderful. I love it. It's weird. What did I do the other day? Oh, there was a playlist. I had to make a new playlist because I couldn't remember the name of this. So it's very Harry Potterish in terms of like when you have these smart speakers in different rooms and you can say these phrases, because I've created routines to like turn on 4 different plugs in my living room area, including the TV, or turn them off at night and things like that. And we do say Harry Potter things, so like Lumos is one of our commands that lights it up. And I say that every day when I walk in the living room. It's quite geeky. But you have to figure stuff out. And as we contemplate moving to North Carolina here in a few months, I'm going to be actually switching off, circuit breakers and, unwiring light switches that are, been hardwired, into our house. So not for the faint of heart necessarily, not something that requires an electrical engineering degree. But there can be a lot of not only, hardware, electricity, technology sorts of stuff that you got to navigate, but you got to make the apps work. And then if you have a power surge, or like I had that the other day, I was like, how do I reset this? So we have not had a mission critical thing go down, but if you've watched Mr. Robot, and that's probably, it rated MA, there's some interesting scenes there about homes being hacked. So hopefully we're not going to read about the Neiffer or the Fryer home, becoming one of the case studies for that kind of thing.
Yeah. Ain't that the truth?
Keeping your stuff updated and using good passwords on your Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Always good.
Yep, that's me too. And I will tell you, I feel a little safer having segregated IoT off devices off my main network. So it comes with some other challenges, but otherwise it's not too bad. So
yeah, that's good.
Well, right. Wes, I think we're probably at the end, huh? Let's go ahead and do Geeks of the Week.
Okay, yeah, we got 5 minutes. So my Geek of the Week is the Russia-Ukraine monitor map by the Center for Information Resources. This actually came from that Wired article that I referenced, talking about disinformation and the way in which perhaps Russia has been misstepping when it comes to misinformation. This is a map that is a crowdsourced effort by the Center for Information Resilience, Bellingcat, and the Conflicts Intelligence Team to document and verify significant incidents during the conflict in Ukraine. So that their goal is to provide reliable information. They're logging stuff in a central database, and reminds me of some of the things that Clay Shirky, who's the author of a great book that's now a little dated, but called Here Comes Everybody, during the Haitian earthquake, during different kinds of crises, when information technologies have been leveraged to try to, identify where resources are needed or connect people, kind of like that website we mentioned earlier in the show for refugees to try to find housing. But this is about significant events. So civilian casualties, Russian firing positions, munitions, military losses. It's just absolutely fascinating. And I am a huge, huge fan of geomaps. And so here it is. This is a geomap because you've got a live map of the Ukraine, and then you've got these different map pins around that are color coded. And then you can go ahead and select those on the map, or you can go over to the legend on the right side, and then you can see these posts about date and time and a hyperlink and more information. And I definitely think overall, not only this particular map, but the Wikipedia article right now for the war that's happening in the Ukraine, it's a great opportunity to talk to students about how do people decide what is credible or what is not. The talk page on those Wikipedia pages is fascinating in terms of what is being debated, and then how it's being vetted and how the Wikipedia community is responding. So highly recommend that. And again, that website is available from that Wired magazine article that I referenced, but it's called the Russia-Ukraine Monitor Map.
Okay, wonderful. Well, let me share a tool that I know we've talked about before, but I can't explain enough how if this is not already in your teacher toolbox, it needs to be. It's the tool Canva, and Canva is an online visual media editing suite. It kind of started off more or less in the picture print realm, but they've added so many features lately, including the ability to edit admittedly rudimentary, but you can edit video clips now on Canva as well. And if you're a teacher with a verifiable email address, teacher email address, you can simply sign up and you'll get the pro version of it, which includes millions of pieces of art, a bunch of wonderful templates, and also an assignment engine too, to where you could use Canva as a way of exchanging digital assignments back and forth with your students. And what I love about Canva is that it's really easy to create professional looking stuff pretty quickly. And also it's got a wonderful drag and drop interface that makes editing super simple. But if you're not already using Canva, it's absolutely worth your time and energy to do so, because I find it to be probably the most professional editing suite I've used outside of the full-blown Adobe suite. And in fact, I prefer it for most of my day-to-day editing.
Awesome. And Peggy George, hello, Peggy. She's joining us live here in the show. Says she's participated in EdTech 2022 the past 3 days, and they featured Canva for Ed in several presentations. My good friend Cindy Danner-Kuhn, who teaches EdTech courses at the College of Education at Kansas State, has always loved Canva and consider that to be one of the tools I think that she really wants all her pre-service teachers to be introduced to. And honestly, it's one that I haven't played with a lot. So I appreciate, again, your ringing endorsement for it. So it's probably something I need to revisit and play with some more. Well, Dr. Neiffer, we have done it again. We have 30 seconds left until a 60-minute show. So where can people find you when you're not here on time on Wednesdays?
Sure. Best place to find me is on Twitter, Tech Savvy Teach. And yourself, sir?
I am at wesfryer.com, and you can find various links to connect with me there, and wfryer is my Twitter. So we want to thank you for joining us, and if you have not subscribed, we want to encourage you to subscribe to us in your favorite pod-catching app, wherever that is. Also, write a little review for us if you can. You can find both small 32 kilobit MP3 audio versions and about 100 meg video versions if you want to download the video version or not just watch it on YouTube or Facebook, all on edtechsr.com, where you'll find our links, our show notes, the articles that we talk about, those that we don't, and I need to still send the one out from last week, and I'll do that. We now have a Substack, and currently it's just basically sharing the same content, but in link form, and you can get that by going to edtechsr.substack.com. So I want to thank everybody for their attendance. Encourage you to join us live if you have an opportunity. Reach out to us on Twitter. And until next time, stay savvy and stay safe. Hope to see you again soon on the EdTech Situation Room.
Good night.